Standing on the balcony of my penthouse, I felt like a king surveying my kingdom. The city skyline stretched out before me, a dazzling array of lights twinkling in the evening sky, each one representing an opportunity, a deal, or a moment of triumph. It was a view that I had dreamed of in my youth, a view that reflected my rise from nothing to a self-made millionaire. But tonight, despite the beauty that surrounded me, an unsettling feeling twisted in my gut. I took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp night air, hoping to exhale the doubts that clouded my mind. "Look at what you've built, Richard," I muttered to myself, as if saying the words aloud could dispel the shadows creeping into my thoughts. Each beam of light reminded me of the sacrifices I had made, the relentless pursuit of success that had led me to this moment, a journey paved with hard work, ambition, and perhaps a few questionable choices. In the quiet of my penthouse, I pondered the choices that had brought me to this point. I had clawed my way up from the depths of poverty, fueled by a desire to escape my past. But as I replayed the memories, I couldn't help but feel the weight of my decisions pressing down on me. Had I sacrificed too much? Was I truly untouchable, or was the foundation of my empire more fragile than I dared to admit? Suddenly, I was jolted from my thoughts by the sound of laughter echoing from inside the penthouse. It was a reminder that I was not alone. I turned and walked back inside, where the lavish party was in full swing. The sound of clinking glasses and animated conversations filled the space, a stark contrast to the solitude I had just experienced. I had hosted this charity gala to reinforce my image as a philanthropic businessman, a man who cared about giving back to the community. But deep down, I questioned whether my motivations were as noble as they appeared. "Richard, come here," a voice called, cutting through the noise. It was Lisa, my assistant, her blonde hair pulled back into a sleek bun. She wore a shimmering dress that reflected the light, making her stand out among the crowd. "You need to meet our donors. They're eager to hear your speech." "Of course," I replied, forcing a smile as I joined her. As we made our way through the crowd, I felt the familiar rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was my arena, a place where I thrived, where I could charm and captivate an audience. Yet as I approached the microphone, I couldn't shake the lingering doubts that had plagued me moments before. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady as I scanned the room filled with attentive faces. "Thank you for being here tonight. Your generosity means the world to those we aim to help." I spoke about our initiatives, about the lives we were changing, and the community we were building together. The words flowed easily. They were rehearsed, polished for nights like this. But as I looked out, I noticed a figure lingering in the shadows at the back of the room. The person stood with arms crossed, a knowing smile playing on their lips as they watched me intently. My heart raced and a chill ran down my spine. I couldn't place them, but there was something unsettling about that smile. I pushed the thought aside, reminding myself to focus on my speech. "Together, we can make a difference," I concluded, eliciting a round of applause that filled the room. As the crowd cheered, I felt a sense of accomplishment wash over me. I had delivered another successful speech, had charmed those around me once again. But as I stepped off the stage, the figure remained in my peripheral vision, their presence a constant reminder of the past I had tried so hard to leave behind. The gala continued, but my mind drifted. I engaged in conversation with donors, laughing and toasting to our shared successes, yet I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The figure was still there, lingering like a specter. I excused myself from the group, my curiosity piqued. Making my way through the crowd, I approached the back of the room. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice low, barely audible above the chatter. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a familiar face that sent a wave of disbelief crashing over me. "Richard Hawthorne," they said, their tone mocking yet oddly warm. "It's been a long time." "Mark?" I gasped, recognizing my old friend from a life I had tried to forget. Memories flooded back, our reckless youth, the choices that had led us down divergent paths. I had thought I would never see him again. "I've been watching you," Mark said, his smile widening. "You've done well for yourself." "Why are you here?" I demanded, the unease growing. I didn't want to revisit the past, especially not with someone who knew my darkest secrets. "I wanted to see the man you've become," he replied, his gaze piercing through me. "And to remind you that the past has a way of creeping back in." I felt a chill run down my spine at his words. "I've moved on, Mark. Whatever happened back then is behind me." "Is it?" he challenged, his tone serious now. "You can't outrun your past, Richard. It's always there, lurking in the shadows." I turned away, not wanting to engage further. I needed to focus on the gala, on the image I had crafted. But as I mingled with guests, I could still feel Mark's eyes on me, a reminder that my past was not as distant as I had hoped. Later that night, I returned to my penthouse, the weight of the evening settling heavily on my shoulders. I poured myself a drink, hoping to drown out the uneasiness that lingered. The city skyline glimmered outside, but the view no longer inspired me. Instead, it felt like a cage, trapping me between who I was and who I had become. As I prepared for bed, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen, frowning when I saw an anonymous message. My heart raced as I opened it, the words sending a jolt of fear through me. "I know your secret. It's time for the truth to come out." I brushed it off as a prank, a cruel joke from someone who had no idea of the gravity of my past, but the unsettling feeling remained, gnawing at me as I tried to calm my racing heart. I slid into bed, pulling the sheets tight around me, yet sleep eluded me. The shadows of my past loomed larger than ever, and I knew that this was only the beginning. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse, casting a warm glow across the room. I could hear the faint hum of the city waking up beneath me, but my mind was already racing. I had barely slept, haunted by the anonymous message that had lingered in my thoughts like a persistent shadow. My past, which I had carefully tucked away, was creeping back into my life, and I felt an unsettling mix of dread and anger. As I sat at my sleek glass dining table, a steaming cup of coffee cradled in my hands, I tried to focus on the day ahead. Lisa, my assistant, would arrive any minute with the usual updates, but today I dreaded the news she would bring. My phone buzzed on the table, but I ignored it, too preoccupied with the chaos in my mind. Just then, the door swung open, and Lisa walked in, her expression unusually tense. "Richard," she said, her voice steady but laced with concern. "We need to talk." I set my coffee down and leaned back in my chair, bracing myself. "What is it? More bad news?" Lisa handed me a folder, her eyes searching mine. "It's about a journalist named Sarah Lawson. She's investigating your past." My heart sank. Investigating? What could she possibly want with me? "She's been digging into your life, Richard. There are rumors about a scandal from years ago, something about fraud and betrayal." I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. Fraud? That's ridiculous. I've worked hard to build this empire. There's nothing to find. Maybe not. But if she's persistent, she might uncover something damaging. Her tone was grave, and I could see the concern etched on her face. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the polished floor. "What do? We can't let her publish anything." Lisa took a deep breath. "I think we need to consider our options carefully. We could threaten legal action, but that might only provoke her. Or we could try to control the narrative ourselves." "Control the narrative," I echoed, feeling a surge of panic. "You mean lie? We both know that's not an option." "Then we need to be proactive. Perhaps a press release, something that acknowledges your past while highlighting how much you've changed." I rubbed my temples, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on me. I can't believe this is happening. I thought I had left all that behind. "Richard, you can't run from your past forever. It's better to face it head-on than to let someone else dictate the story." As I processed her words, I felt a flicker of defiance. "You're right. I can't let this journalist dictate how my story ends. I have to take control." With a newfound determination, I paced the room, formulating a plan. "Let's set up a meeting with my lawyer. We need to prepare for whatever Sarah is planning." Lisa nodded, her expression shifting from concern to encouragement. "I'll arrange it right away." As she left the room, I took a moment to collect my thoughts. The walls of my penthouse, once a fortress of success, now felt like a prison. Memories of my past flooded my mind. Choices I had made, people I had hurt. I had built a life that appeared perfect on the surface, yet the cracks were beginning to show. Later that afternoon, I found myself sitting across from my lawyer, David, in his stark office filled with legal books and framed diplomas. The air was thick with tension as he reviewed the information Lisa had gathered about Sarah Lawson. "Richard, it's essential we tread carefully here," David said, his eyes flickering between the documents and my face. "If she's found evidence linking you to any wrongdoing, it could be catastrophic for your reputation and your business." "Do you think she has anything concrete?" I asked, a knot tightening in my stomach. It's hard to say. Journalists can be relentless when they believe they have a lead. If she's managed to uncover something significant, we need to be prepared for a public relations disaster. The thought made my stomach churn. What are my options? David leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "We could file a cease and desist order, but that might only fuel her investigation. I suggest we take a proactive approach. If you have any skeletons in your closet, it might be wise to address them before she does." "I don't want to relive that part of my life," I replied, my voice tight. "I've moved on." "Moving on doesn't erase history, Richard. You need to own your past if you want to regain control of your narrative." I stared at him, frustration bubbling within me. "So you're saying I should just come clean? Is that really the best course of action?" David nodded. "It's about transparency. If you can acknowledge your past mistakes, it may help mitigate the fallout. People respect honesty." As I mulled over his words, a sense of resignation washed over me. I had spent years building a facade, and now it felt like it was crumbling before my eyes. "Fine. If that's what it takes, I'll do it." "Good. I'll prepare a statement for you to review. But remember, this is a delicate situation. We need to handle it with care," David cautioned. After leaving his office, I felt a mix of dread and determination. The thought of confronting my past was overwhelming, but I understood the stakes. I had to take control before someone else did. Meanwhile, Sarah Lawson was deep into her investigation. In her modest apartment filled with stacks of notes and files, she pored over every detail she could find about Richard Hawthorne. She had come across whispers of a scandal that had been buried for years, and her instincts told her there was more to the story. With her laptop open, she typed furiously, piecing together the timeline of Richard's rise to power. "This can't just be a fluke," she muttered to herself, her brow furrowing in concentration. "There's something here that the public needs to know." As she sifted through the information, she recalled her initial motivations for investigating Richard. It wasn't just about the story, it was also personal. She had seen firsthand how power could corrupt and how individuals could hide behind facades. Richard's public persona was polished, but she had a feeling that beneath it lay a different truth, one that deserved to be uncovered. With a determined glint in her eye, she picked up her phone and dialed her source. "I need to know everything you have on Richard Hawthorne. I have a feeling this story is bigger than I originally thought." As she spoke, the pieces began to fall into place. The more she learned, the more convinced she became that Richard's past was not just a series of unfortunate events. It was a story of greed and betrayal that could resonate with the public. "Keep digging," she instructed her source, her voice steady. "This is going to be explosive." Back in my penthouse, the weight of my past loomed large. I couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah was getting closer, and I had to act fast. Whether I liked it or not, my history was about to collide with my present, and I needed to be ready to face the consequences. The weight of the impending article loomed over me like a dark cloud threatening to unleash a storm. My office, once a sanctuary of confidence and control, felt stifling and chaotic. The calls from my business partners had become increasingly frantic, each conversation punctuated by the same underlying fear: uncertainty. I could hear Lisa's voice in the background, attempting to soothe their concerns, but the panic in her tone mirrored my own. "Richard, we need to talk," Lisa said, entering my office with a grave expression. Her usually bright eyes were clouded with worry, and I could sense that something was deeply wrong. "I've been receiving threats." "Threats?" My heart raced. "What do you mean?" "Ever since the investigation came to light, I've been getting anonymous messages. They're not just warnings, Richard, they're personal. She swallowed hard, her hands trembling slightly. They know about my family, my background. They're trying to scare me into silence. I rubbed my temples, trying to process the magnitude of what was happening. What do they want? Do they want money? What can I do? They want information. They think I have something that could help them take you down. She paused, her voice low. And it's not just about the article anymore. It's about your past. They're digging, Richard. They want to expose everything. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. The ghosts of my past were inching closer, ready to drag me back into a darkness I thought I had escaped. We need to be strategic about this, Lisa, I said, forcing a calmness I didn't feel. We can't let them intimidate us. Let's get ahead of this. Are you sure about that? She asked, her brow furrowing. What if it's already too late? People are pulling out left and right. If they publish this, your empire could collapse overnight. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing thoughts. I had built everything I had on a foundation of grit and determination, but now it felt as if that foundation was crumbling beneath me. Let's not panic. We'll craft a response. We'll show them we're not afraid. But deep down, I knew that fear was gnawing at me. I had spent years cultivating an image of success, and now that image was teetering on the brink of destruction. I had to confront the truth of my past, yet the thought of doing so sent a wave of nausea through me. As I paced the room, I recalled the mysterious figure from the gala, the one who had watched me with that knowing smile. My gut twisted at the thought of reaching out to someone who could potentially hold the key to my downfall, but I was running out of options. If I didn't act soon, the truth would be ripped from my hands and I would be powerless to stop it. Lisa, I said, my voice steadier now, I need you to find out everything you can about that journalist and what she's uncovered. We need to know what we're dealing with. Richard, are you sure you want to go down that road? She asked, her concern evident. It could backfire. I don't have a choice, I replied, feeling the weight of my decision settle heavily on my shoulders. I have to regain control before it slips away completely. The next few hours were a blur. I made calls, set up meetings, and strategized how to mitigate the disaster that loomed ahead. But my mind kept drifting back to that figure, Mark. I had to meet him. I had to know what he knew. The following day, I found myself sitting in a dimly lit coffee shop, the aroma of roasted beans mingling with the palpable tension in the air. My heart pounded as I waited for Mark to arrive. I hadn't seen him in years, but the memories came rushing back, uninvited. Our shared past was a tapestry woven with both camaraderie and betrayal, and I was afraid of what he might bring to light. When he finally walked in, I recognized him immediately. Mark had changed, but the intensity in his eyes remained the same. He scanned the room before locking eyes with me, a hint of a smirk playing on his lips. "Richard," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Long time no see. You look, well, for a man on the brink of collapse." "Cut the pleasantries, Mark," I said, leaning forward. "What do you know about the investigation? I need to know everything." He chuckled, a low, sardonic laugh that sent a chill down my spine. "You always were direct. I admire that about you, but let's be honest, this isn't just about the article, is it? You're scared." "Scared?" I echoed, my fists clenching. "I'm not scared of you or anyone else, Mark. I'm here to find out what you know." "All right then," he said, leaning back with a casual air. "I've got some evidence of your past, things you thought were buried, the kind of stuff that can ruin reputations." My stomach churned at his words. "What do you want?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It's simple. I want a significant payment to keep my mouth shut. You can afford it, can't you?" "Bribery?" I spat. "You're trying to extort me." "It's not extortion if it's a business deal, Richard," he replied, his tone unyielding. "You and I both know that your empire is built on a precarious foundation. One wrong move, and it all goes up in flames. I'm offering you a lifeline." "Why should I trust you?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "You have your own agenda." "True," he admitted, his eyes narrowing. "But I also have my reasons for wanting to keep this quiet. Let's just say your downfall might not be as beneficial to me as you think." I sat back, weighing my options. The thought of giving in to his demands made my skin crawl, but the alternative was far worse. "And if I refuse?" Then I walk away with the evidence and you can watch everything you've built crumble to dust, he said, his gaze unwavering. It's your choice, Richard. I felt the walls closing in around me. My empire, my reputation, everything I had worked for was at stake. But the core of me resisted the idea of submitting to blackmail. I need time to think, I finally said, my voice steadying. Time is a luxury you don't have, Mark warned, rising from the table. I'll be in touch. Don't keep me waiting too long. As he walked away, I felt a mix of anger and desperation. The shadows of my past were encroaching, and I was left standing at the precipice, grappling with the decisions that could either save or destroy me. I knew I had to confront my demons, but the fear of what lay ahead was almost paralyzing. I left the coffee shop with a heavy heart, the weight of my choices pressing down on me. I had to face the truth, not just for myself, but for everyone who depended on me. The world outside felt brighter, yet I was engulfed in darkness, and I knew that the storm was only just beginning. The neon lights outside the diner flickered like the memories racing through my mind as I took a seat in the corner booth. The smell of greasy burgers and fries hung in the air, a stark contrast to the tension that filled my chest. I glanced at the door, waiting for Mark to arrive, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and anticipation. This was it, the confrontation I had been both dreading and craving. When he finally walked in, I recognized the familiar silhouette immediately. Mark had changed little since our youth, still tall with a lean frame, and that same devil-may-care attitude that had both drawn me to him and pushed me away over the years. He spotted me, and without a hint of hesitation, made his way to my booth. "Richard," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. His voice was low, almost conspiratorial. "Still playing the role of the untouchable businessman, I see." "Cut the crap, Mark," I shot back, my irritation bubbling to the surface. "You know why we're here," he smirked, leaning back as if he were completely unfazed by the gravity of our situation. "I know, but it's been a while since we've had a good chat. I figured we could reminisce a bit before we get into the heavy stuff." "Reminisce? Is that what you call it?" "I call it a nightmare," I retorted, my fingers drumming on the table. "You have something I need to get back. I'm not here to play games." Mark's expression shifted slightly, the smirk fading into something more serious. "Let's not act like you're the victim here, Richard. You made your choices, and they weren't exactly the best ones." I felt a flash of anger at his words, anger that had long been buried beneath layers of regret and anxiety. "And you think holding evidence over my head is the answer? What do you want from me, Mark?" He leaned forward, his eyes piercing mine. "I want you to understand that the past doesn't just disappear because you've built a shiny new empire. It haunts you, it defines you, and right now, you're running away from it." The diner buzzed around us, but all I could hear was the thumping of my heart in my ears. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "What do you want? Money? Fame? Just say it." Mark chuckled softly, shaking his head. "It's not about money, Richard. It's about accountability. If you want this evidence back, you have to take responsibility for what you've done. No more hiding behind your wealth or your reputation." "Accountability," I echoed, bitterness rising in my throat. "You think I don't know what I've done? I've spent years trying to make amends, trying to be someone else. You don't know the lengths I've gone to." "I know exactly what you've done," he interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "And pretending to be a philanthropist at galas doesn't erase the damage you caused. You think people will just forget because you flash a smile and donate a few bucks?" My fists clenched, the anger threatening to boil over. "You don't get to judge me, Mark. You weren't there when I was clawing my way up from the bottom. You didn't see the sacrifices I made to build this life." "I was there, Richard," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I was there when you chose greed over friendship, when you betrayed the people who trusted you. You think you're just going to walk away from that?" The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had spent years trying to bury my past, but here it was, rising to the surface in a way I couldn't ignore. "What do you want me to do? Go on some grand journey of redemption, wave a magic wand and make it all disappear?" Mark shook his head, his expression softening ever so slightly. "No, I want you to face it. You can't keep running, Richard. You have to confront the truth, even if it's ugly. That's the only way you'll ever be free from it." I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of the friend I once knew, the one who had stood by my side through thick and thin. But all I saw was a stranger, someone who had become a mirror reflecting my own failures back at me. "And what if I don't? What if I refuse to play your game?" "Then I walk out that door," Mark said simply, gesturing to the bustling street outside. "And you'll be left with your empire built on lies, waiting for the day it all comes crashing down." The weight of his words settled heavily in the air between us. I could feel the walls closing in, the walls I had so carefully constructed around my life. I had spent years avoiding the truth, but here it was, staring me in the face. "You think I'm afraid of losing everything? I've already lost it all once." "Then make it mean something," Mark challenged, his voice steady. "Face the consequences. Show the world who you really are. You might be surprised by how they respond." I fell silent, the clatter of dishes and the hum of conversation around us fading into the background. Part of me wanted to scream, to lash out and tell him to leave me alone, but another part of me, a part I had long suppressed, knew he was right. I had been running for too long, hiding behind my wealth and success. "Fine," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'll face it, but I want that evidence back." Mark studied me for a moment, his expression unreadable. "You're serious?" "I'm not going to let my past dictate my future any longer," I declared, a surge of determination filling me. "But I need you to understand, I won't be blackmailed. If I'm going to face the music, I'm going to do it on my own terms." For a moment, Mark remained silent, and I could almost see the wheels turning in his mind. Finally, he nodded slowly. "All right, but you need to be prepared for what comes next. It won't be easy." "I'm ready," I said, my heart racing. "Whatever it takes." Mark leaned back, a hint of respect flickering in his eyes. "Then I'll give you the evidence. But remember, Richard, facing your past doesn't mean it will just fade away. You'll have to own it." As he reached into his jacket pocket, I felt a mixture of relief and trepidation. The evidence he was about to hand over could either be my salvation or my demise. But for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope. Hope that I could finally confront the demons that had haunted me for so long. "Here," he said, sliding a small envelope across the table. "Take it. But don't think this is the end. It's just the beginning." I took the envelope, my hands trembling slightly as I grasped it. "Thank you," I managed to say, though the words felt inadequate. Mark stood up, his expression unreadable once more. "Just remember, Richard, the truth has a way of coming out, whether you like it or not. Don't let it destroy you." As he walked away, I felt the weight of the envelope in my hands, heavier than I had expected. It was a moment of clarity that left me both terrified and exhilarated. I could no longer run from my past, no longer hide behind the facade I had built. I had to face the music, and for better or worse, I was ready to reclaim my narrative. With every step I took toward confronting my past, I felt a small part of me begin to heal. I was Richard Hawthorne, and I would no longer allow my history to define me. It was time to step into the light and face what lay ahead. The air was thick with tension as I stood at the podium, gripping the edges with white-knuckled intensity. Today was the day I would confront my past, and the weight of what I was about to say felt heavier than any business deal I had ever navigated. The cameras flashed, and the murmurs of the gathered reporters surrounded me like a swarm of bees. I took a deep breath, the smell of polished wood and expensive cologne mixing in the air. "Thank you all for being here," I began, my voice steady but tinged with emotion. "I stand before you today not just as Richard Hawthorne, the businessman, but as a man who has made mistakes, serious mistakes." The words felt foreign, yet liberating as they slipped from my lips. I could see the eyes of the audience widen in surprise, some scribbling frantic notes, others exchanging incredulous glances. "I am here to tell you that I have not always lived up to the ideals I preach," I continued, the memories flooding back, the choices driven by greed and ambition that had led me down a dark path. Years ago, I was involved in activities that I deeply regret. I hurt people, and I compromised my integrity for the sake of profit. The honesty was raw, the air around me crackling with an energy I hadn't anticipated. As I shared my story, I could feel the room shift. Some people leaned in, their expressions softening, while others remained skeptical, arms crossed tightly against their chests. I could see Sarah, the journalist who had been digging into my past, furiously typing on her laptop, her brow furrowed in concentration. I wondered what she was thinking. Did she see the sincerity in my words, or was she simply waiting for the next scandal to break? "I've spent years building an empire, one that I thought defined me," I said, glancing around at the sea of faces. "But I've come to understand that true success is not measured by wealth or accolades. It's about honesty, integrity, and the courage to face one's demons." I paused, letting the weight of my confession settle in the atmosphere. "And today I am asking for your forgiveness and a chance to make amends." The murmurs grew louder, a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. A hand shot up from the audience, an older gentleman, his face lined with skepticism. "Mr. Hawthorne, how can we trust you? How do we know this isn't just a PR stunt?" The question hung in the air, heavy and challenging. I met his gaze, determined. "You can't trust me just because I'm standing here today. Trust must be earned, and I know that. I am committed to transparency moving forward. I will work tirelessly to rebuild your faith in me, not with words, but with my actions. I intend to use my resources to help those I've wronged and contribute positively to our community." Another reporter piped up. "What specific actions will you take?" I had anticipated this question. "I plan to invest in local charities and mentorship programs for at-risk youth. I want to share my story in schools, to help young people understand the value of integrity and the consequences of choices made in haste." I felt a surge of resolve, knowing that my journey could inspire others to avoid the pitfalls I had faced. The room erupted into questions, both supportive and skeptical. I answered them as best I could, feeling the tension ebb and flow. But beneath the surface, I felt the weight of judgment pressing down on me. Would they ever truly believe that I had changed? As the press conference wrapped up, I stepped away from the podium, heart racing. The mixed reactions swirled in my mind. Had I done enough? Had I opened the floodgates to redemption? Or had I merely cracked the door? Later that evening, I sat in my office, the city lights twinkling below like a sea of stars. Lisa, my assistant, entered, her expression unreadable. "Richard, the response has been mixed," she said carefully, her tone cautious. "Some are praising your honesty, but many remain unconvinced. The article Sarah is working on is set to publish soon. It could change everything." I leaned back in my chair, running a hand through my hair. "I know, but I had to do it, Lisa. I had to own my mistakes. It's the only way forward." She studied me for a moment. "Just be careful. There are people who want to see you fall. They won't let this go easily." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. I was acutely aware that I was walking a tightrope, balancing my ambition against the precarious reality of my past. As the days passed, the fallout from the press conference lingered like a shadow. The mixed reviews weighed heavily on my shoulders, and I found myself questioning whether I could truly rebuild my reputation. The media was relentless, and I was caught in the crosshairs of scrutiny. Then, out of the blue, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Can we schedule a follow-up interview? I think your story deserves more depth." I hesitated, heart racing. This could either be an opportunity to further clarify my intentions or a chance for her to delve deeper into the past I was trying to escape. I took a breath, my fingers hovering over the screen before typing back, "Yes, I'd be open to it. When works for you?" We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe, a far cry from the bright lights and cameras of the press conference. When I arrived, Sarah was already seated, her laptop open, her expression serious yet curious. "Richard," she began, her gaze steady, "I was impressed with your willingness to come forward, but I need to know, what happens if this doesn't go as you hope?" What if the public doesn't forgive you? I leaned back in my chair, the question cutting deeper than I expected. If they don't forgive me, then I guess I'll have to live with that. But I can't keep running from my past. I have to confront it head on. That's brave, she said, her expression softening, but bravery isn't enough. You need to show real change. I know. I've started reaching out to organizations for partnerships. I want to be part of the solution, not just talking about it. She nodded, typing notes furiously. What about the people you hurt directly? Have you reached out to them? I hesitated, the ghosts of my past looming large. Not yet. It's complicated. I'm not sure how they'd react. Sarah looked up, her expression thoughtful. You can't truly move forward without making amends. It's part of the healing process. You're right, I replied, my heart heavy with the realization. I need to face them, even if it's uncomfortable. The conversation flowed, and I found myself sharing more than I had anticipated, my regrets, my fears, and my hopes for the future. It felt cathartic, as if I were shedding layers of shame and guilt. When the interview ended, I felt lighter, but the weight of the journey ahead loomed large. As I left the cafe, I realized that the road to redemption wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. I was ready to confront the past, to seek forgiveness, and to embrace the uncertainty of the future. I had taken the first step, and with each passing day, I could feel the shadows of my past beginning to recede. As I stood in my sleek modern office, the weight of my past pressed down on me like a heavy fog. The city sprawled out beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a sea of lights twinkling like stars in the night sky. I had fought hard to build this empire, but it felt precarious now, as if it could crumble at any moment. My heart raced as I replayed the events of the last few days. Just when I thought I had taken control, the ground shifted beneath me. I glanced at the clock. It was late. I was supposed to be meeting Sarah, the journalist who had been covering my story. But part of me was still reeling from the revelation about Mark. Why had he betrayed me? Why would he record our conversations? I gritted my teeth, frustration bubbling to the surface. I had turned a new leaf, and yet here I was, ready to be dragged back into the darkness. The door creaked open, and Lisa stepped in. Her expression was a mixture of concern and determination. Richard, we need to talk about Mark. I just got off the phone with our lawyer, and he's worried about what might come out. I know, I replied, running a hand through my hair, but I have to confront him. I can't let him control the narrative. Lisa crossed her arms. You're playing with fire. He has the upper hand now, and we don't know what he's planning. You need to think this through. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility on my shoulders. I can't keep running away from my past. I need to face it head on. Just then, my phone buzzed on the desk. It was a message from Sarah. Can we meet earlier? I have something important to discuss. My heart raced again, a mix of hope and anxiety flooding through me. I have to go, I told Lisa, grabbing my jacket. I'll figure it out. The cafe was buzzing with the evening crowd when I arrived. I spotted Sarah at a corner table, her expression serious. As I approached, a knot formed in my stomach. Thanks for meeting me, I said, sliding into the seat across from her. Richard, I need to be honest with you, she began, her voice steady. I'm not just a journalist, I'm Mark's sister. My breath caught in my throat. What? You're kidding, right? No, I'm not. Mark and I haven't spoken in years. When I heard about your situation, I felt compelled to reach out. I want to understand and to help. I was taken aback. Help how? By dragging me into whatever mess you two have? I don't need more complications. Listen to me, she pressed, leaning closer. Mark is hurting. He feels betrayed by you, and I think he's using this situation to get back at you. But he also holds the key to so much of what happened back then. If we work together, we could expose the real story behind the scandal, not just to save you, but to help him find closure too. I leaned back, processing her words. Could this be an opportunity? You're suggesting a collaboration? Yes. If we can uncover the truth, we could present it in a way that highlights your journey of redemption instead of just the mistakes. You could show people that you've changed, she replied, her eyes earnest. I felt a flicker of hope. But what if Mark refuses to cooperate? Sarah shrugged. I think he might be more open than you think. He's been angry for a long time, but there's still a bond between you two. If you reach out, you might find he's not as closed off as you believe. The thought of confronting Mark again sent a shiver down my spine, but I knew I had to try. Okay, I'll do it, I said, my voice firm. But if I'm going to face him, I need you to be there with me. Absolutely, Sarah agreed, a smile breaking through her serious demeanor. Let's set up a meeting. We can work on a plan to present to Mark. As we discussed the details, a sense of purpose ignited within me. This was my chance to reclaim my narrative, to confront my past not just for myself, but for Mark as well. I could feel the pieces of my life slowly coming together, but the reality of the situation still loomed large. The next day, I found myself standing outside a small diner, the very place where Mark and I used to hang out as kids. The nostalgia hit me hard as I pushed the door open. The bell above jingled, and I spotted Mark in a booth at the back. He looked older, more worn, his eyes shadowed by years of resentment. "Richard," he said flatly, barely looking up from his coffee. "Mark," I replied, taking a seat across from him. "Thanks for meeting me." He sighed, setting his cup down. "Let's get this over with. I don't want to waste my time." I felt the tension in the air. "I understand you're angry. You have every right to be. But I want to talk about what happened between us. I think we can help each other." "What do you mean, help each other?" he scoffed, crossing his arms. "I've been working with Sarah. She's your sister, and she wants to uncover the truth about everything. I think we can face what happened together," I explained, trying to keep my tone even. Mark's eyes narrowed. "You think this is about you? You think you can just waltz in here and make everything right after all these years? You don't know the half of it." "I know I made mistakes," I said, my voice rising slightly. "But I can't keep running. I want to take responsibility. I want to make amends." "Amends?" he echoed, incredulous. "You think money and power can fix everything?" "No, I don't. I'm offering you a chance to share your side of the story," I continued, desperation creeping in. "You can tell the world what really happened, and we can put an end to the lies." Mark studied me, his expression softening just a fraction. "And what makes you think I'd trust you?" "Because I need this too. I want to show everyone that I've changed, that I'm not that person anymore," I admitted, my voice cracking slightly. "I can't change the past, but I want to change the future." There was a long pause, the air thick with unspoken words. Finally, Mark leaned back, a hint of contemplation replacing his animosity. "I don't know, Richard. It's not that simple." "I know it's not," I replied, my heart racing. "But if we work together, we can tell our stories, both of them, yours and mine. We can show that redemption is possible." Mark sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. "Fine, I'll think about it. But don't expect me to just jump on board. Trust isn't something you regain overnight." "Fair enough," I replied, feeling a surge of relief wash over me. "Just know that I'm here ready to listen." As I left the diner, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I had taken a step toward confronting my past, not just for myself, but for Mark and Sarah too. Walking down the street, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. My story was not just about the mistakes I had made, it was about the journey of healing, forgiveness, and growth. I glanced up at the sky, feeling a glimmer of hope. For the first time in a long time, I believed that I could embrace my past and emerge stronger on the other side. This was my chance to inspire others to face their own shadows, to show that true power comes from vulnerability and honesty. And with that thought, I stepped into the light, ready to reclaim my life and my truth.